So a couple things the last couple years have taught me is that I really love traveling, taking trips with my family, and my community means a lot to me. As we started pulling Claire, my only daughter, out of all of the things fun in 2020 and telling her that mom and dad were now going to replace all these fun activities in her life, she would say, "This is not great." But we would have been a lot worse off had it not been for our neighbors, for our community coming together to pull off things like socially distanced pizza nights, block parties, and Halloween parades. And I will say, many of you probably share similar stories. We really relied on our community in a time of need. But I would say those stories are probably a little different than mine. Your story is different because your community is different. Every community is different. And just like every community is different, every project is different. And with every project, I know we have an opportunity to make it about the community, educate the community, and involve the community. In an urban setting, I would argue, I don't know, Jess Clark, if you said it first or me, that the community values element is the most important element in a design process to get to that effective solution we were talking about earlier today. Community outreach is not new to most people in this room. In fact, for the last 5 years, I've been kind of on the sidelines in a support role, maybe even a little envious. I wanted to know more about the communities in the Sand Creek watershed that my projects were impacting. So today, let's take a trip, and we're gonna talk about some fun stories where we were able to engage communities during the planning, maintenance, and CIP design process, and have fun, seriously have fun while doing it. I'm gonna take a moment though and say none of these stories would be possible if it wasn't for Mark Schutte in my office. I think everybody needs a good partner in crime, and he has definitely been mine, as well as all the partners who said yes and went along with all my crazy ideas. So thank you. The first stop on our trip is in the Westerly Creek watershed in the Denver and Aurora communities. Historically, Easterly and Westerly Creek were open channel systems, but with development, they've been conveyed through a series of storm sewer systems. Westerly Creek has been detained, and for those that have been around since the 90s, even enclosed through infrastructure like Stapleton International Airport and restored again back to open channel system. During the same time, the Westerly Creek watershed experienced a variety of storm events. Kevin Stewart had a folder called Westerly Creek, and it's fascinating. So this neighborhood knew what it was like to be flooded. The study I'm going to talk to you today about is an outfall systems plan for Westerly Creek downstream of the dam. The OSPs, as we call them, outfall system plan, is not really the study of how water is flowing through Westerly Creek, but rather how water is getting to Westerly Creek. This identifies pluvial flooding or urban flooding risk that's usually not associated with the FEMA flood insurance rate maps. And I don't need to talk to you guys about, the risk with pluvial flooding after Holly's talk today, but I'll probably highlight it again. These studies have a very technical goal. How do we convey the 100-year storm event and meet city local criteria? In a built-out environment, it can be challenging. There's a lot of different factors that need to go into it, but often we land on one goal or one solution: storm sewers. And while understanding that the need for that infrastructure improvement is important for local communities to consider while developing their CIP plans, what do we want the communities to know at this level? To answer that question, we really needed to go from that 20,000-foot level down to ground level. I relied on Denver and Aurora to bring the right people from their communities to the table to answer that question. What do we want to do with this information? What do the residents really need to know? And it's uncomfortable to inform residents that they are at risk, and that they are at risk, and we do not have a timeline to fix that risk, to mitigate that risk. So we had to have many conversations to answer that question, to understand the community. And I will tell you, it's very important, especially I remember Aurora bringing a community expert to one of our conversations to talk to us more about what this community was experiencing. It is a diverse community with over 50 different languages spoken at the local high school. And at the same time, they are experiencing gentrification and redevelopment. All these things really need to be considered when we talk about what does this message look like. Pile on, Aurora and Denver have been very active in this watershed, both completing flood mitigation projects, and Denver recently completed a neighborhood plan. All of this involved extensive outreach already being done by the communities. So what message were we going to put out that wasn't going to be confusing or not received due to the timing of all these other efforts. But again, I just want to point out, I think Holly really struck home this morning, but this risk is scary, and it is real, whether it's on a map or not. And even though it is a scary risk, there are things that people can do to protect themselves before a mitigation project goes into the ground. This is a type of risk, this is what you can do, and also this is what your local government's going to do about it. So we all agreed information needed to get out, but we really wanted to be targeted with our outreach and only limited to areas, to residents or structures that would be immediately impacted. We brought AOR, a marketing firm, on board to develop a mailer to help communicate this risk through pictures, to help with some of the concerns around the language barrier, and to be educational with our message, giving tools to the residents that they can use to protect themselves. We then relied on Bohannon Houston, the design engineer, to create a public-friendly webpage that explained the risk, provided resources to help educate what the residents can do, local government resources, and even a little widget at the top for that Google translation piece. One of the things I learned going through this that I never thought about before is how intentional we need to be with our messaging. This is an image of one of the first drafts of the mailer, and we had the phrase on there, "A little water goes a long way." And when I reached out to Charlie Paris in our office to help with some translations, that does not translate well. It is really only received by people who are fluent in English. Other lessons I learned was that we have to set goals for outreach early in the conversation, and we have to keep having those conversations throughout the planning process. And it's okay to have uncomfortable conversations or come at things with different points of view. I think at one time we even floated the idea, what if we just don't do any outreach? So once you determine what type of outreach is appropriate for your watershed, lean on other experts to help you think outside the box, and really don't be afraid to diversify your team. So I'm an engineer, let's be clear on that, and I want to eliminate flood risk. At the end of the day, we all want to see these projects go into the ground so people are safer in the long run. But in the meantime, we do have an opportunity to educate our communities the next time it rains. So with every planning study that we partner with you on, ask us, what does public outreach look like for this watershed, and how can we make it about the community? So speaking of education, as part of the solution, social trails. Yeah, I went there. If you can't beat them, join them, right? We see them pop up everywhere, but in some places we don't have that luxury. Our next stop on our trip is to Westerly Creek Dam, where we don't have that luxury. Westerly Creek Dam was built in 1991 as a U.S. Army Corps regulated dam. The district, in partnership with the city of Denver, we maintain this dam to meet Corps standards. As recently as 2013, this facility saw water and was inundated and protected the people downstream. Westerly Creek Dam is conveniently located around open space, including Common Grounds Golf Course and Lowry Sports Complex. These areas are an amenity to the community and see a variety of recreational users all year long. Historically, Scott Derschel and I, we would maintain these trails on an as-needed basis. But in 2020, things changed. Gyms closed, people worked from home, and they went to parks. A lot of people went to parks, and they went straight up to the top of Westerly Creek Dam. Once manageable, social trails began to expand and multiply, creating a very erosive condition down the slope of the dam. And as soon as we would restore a social trail, another one would reappear, often, right alongside as we're restoring it, the person is just going up right next to us, right? So every time I drove by this with my family, I would point it out. I'm like, look at this, this is a dam. Why are people walking up and down the face of the dam? But even though it's obvious to me, it may not be obvious to the common park goer. That was my hypothesis. I mean, look at this opportunity to do hill repeats. Am I right? Maybe they just don't know the risk associated with this hill slope. So in 2020, we worked with Valerian to restore some of the signs that were falling apart out there at the dam, to really hammer on why this facility is important, the environmental benefits, and how important it is to stay on the designated trail. We even utilized the local birder in the area to help with our environmental benefits sign. And in 2021, we continued our outreach by sending over 6,300 postcards to adjacent residents focusing on that message: please stay on the designated trail. And I'm happy to report our efforts have continued Just this past weekend, Drew Roberts in my office helped me, along with Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado, Denver Parks, Habitat Management, and RJH to recruit local volunteers and students to help us restore the social trails. It really does take a village sometimes. We used it as an opportunity to educate on the importance of the facility and the importance of vegetation to maintain the structural integrity. What we want to do is to make these the restoration efforts visible, doing it on a Saturday during the middle of all the soccer games, pique not only the volunteers' curiosity, but the public's, to help create stewards in the watersheds, and I'm hoping to save taxpayer money that we have to spend annually restoring these trails on our own. Some things I've learned in this process, and this was a process, is that restorative maintenance requires partners. Doing it in isolation does not get at the problem. The effort you put into any community outreach is directly related to the amount of community participation you can expect. We put a lot of effort into all of this, and we got a lot of effort back out of the community. And I think that there's an opportunity to include the community in every project, even if it is just maintenance. Now, I have to say this for Scott, who's not able to join us today, but this is not going to solve your social trail problems. But I am convinced everybody that was out there that day talked to a resident, explained what was going on, and oftentimes we heard we just didn't know that this is what was going on out here. So if you take away anything today, take away the small battles will win the war. Youth volunteers. They're our next stop down in Arapahoe County. SIMSWA requested a project for channel restoration along Unnamed Creek. Unnamed Creek parallels a trail system that connects Eagle Crest High School, Thunder Ridge Middle School, and Antelope Ridge Elementary School. Students travel along this trail system every day to get to and from school. This project was requested due to the visible instability of the channel, as well as the low water crossings had limited capacity, and there would often be concerns about inundation during rain events and the low water crossings being iced over during snow. So I worked with Nicole Harwell to identify the need, right? We're going to restore this channel and increase capacity of the low water crossings. We're going to select Ingenuity to give us some options, and we are well on our way to checking this thing off the list. And anybody who's worked with me knows that I like checking things off my list. But every time we walk this corridor, the design team, I would often ask, I know what the parents think, but what do the students think when they're in this stream corridor? How do they interact with this space? And for those who were here last year, you may remember the 5 Point Youth Ambassadors, who told us how they were able to influence the design of a park that was completed in their area. And I had a thought. I can't answer that question, what do the students think, on my own, but maybe I can answer it with some partners. SIMSWA immediately agreed. Thanks to Nicole Harwell, we engaged the 5 Point Youth Ambassadors to reach out to local schools and recruit students to be a part of the process. The 5 Point Youth Ambassadors developed an informational video that we shared with local schools to help get around some of the COVID restrictions. And before I knew it, we had 10 volunteers from the local middle and high schools. The design team met out with the new ambassadors, the no-name youth ambassadors, so there is a story there. So on some maps it's called Unnamed Creek, and on some other maps it's called No Name Creek, and they didn't want to be the unnamed youth ambassadors, so they are the no-name youth ambassadors. Totally makes sense when you boil it down. But we met out there with them to kind of explain what we wanted to get out of the project, and then we turned it over to them to ask, what do you guys want to get out of this project? And I had no expectations. But if I would have had some, these kids would have exceeded them. The no-name youth ambassadors turned over to the design team their own logo, a draft or a developed map with all the pins there showing where they had ideas, as well as an outline of their ideas and how they got to those ideas. We were able to turn this information over to Valerian, who developed a design interpretation of things that we could include based off their list of recommendations that worked with our project goals. One of the suggestions they had was to relocate one of the social trails near the elementary school. They were concerns for bike safety, and they noticed that the social trails were developing a muddy situation that was not ideal for the younger students. What I don't think they realized is this idea also eliminated the need for a low water crossing that could help with long-term maintenance concerns and limit the impacts to the stream we were trying to restore. Nicole and I met with the local recreation district, and they agreed that this trail alignment made sense. We got the green light to go ahead, but they did say, you may want to reach out to these 5 homeowners. They may have a concern with you relocating the trail closer to their property. We brought this concern to the No Name Youth Ambassadors, and they were on it. They developed a flyer targeted to those 5 residents specifically, and then they hand-delivered each flyer for us. Nicole still has not gotten a call from anybody that we delivered the flyer to. So where are we currently in this project? We just wrapped up 60% design, and the No Name Youth Ambassadors are busy developing their social media campaign. They're using various different platforms to communicate with their community. And they even went as far as aligning their outreach schedule with our project schedule. I did not ask them to do any of these things, by the way. I have no doubt by pulling the community into this design process that we have enhanced the design. We didn't have to guess what the community want because they told us what they wanted. We've increased the level of public outreach we would have ever done for a project like this. And I have to tell you, these design meetings are inspirational. They're just flat out fun. These kids, they do so much, and they're so excited to be a part of their community in a meaningful way. I will say, to recognize the opportunity to engage the community on this project, we really had to take our eyes off the stream and look around at what was going on in the stream corridor. So, a couple lessons learned. This project is just getting started. This story is not fully realized just yet, so you'll probably hear a follow-up in one way or the other on this one. But there have been some lessons learned already, and we touched on a few of them already today, but I think it's good to reiterate, is we really have to let go of expectations. I found myself wanting to put limits on the suggestions that the students were coming up with and telling them how we used to do things in the past. What is the point of trying something new if we're going to tell them how we used to do it before? We have to keep an open mind. New partners requires consistent and frequent communication. They're not used to working with us. In order to build trust and keep momentum going, you have to be consistent with your communication. And like channel design, community engagement is contextual. Always look for a way to inform the community in a way that works for them. All right, and as I look around here barely, I see my technical community. And since I have your attention, a few of you asked for some information on the Volume 3, Chapter 4 update when you signed up for the symposium, so we're just gonna slide it into the back of this presentation. It was a good transition, come on. We've currently completed what I'm calling phase 2 of the outreach, where we have released every fact sheet to stakeholders for review and comment. We've received over 400 comments, so thank you. The district and Whitewater engineers are busy going through each comment and using those comments to update the chapter. From there, Stream Landscape Architecture will add figures and format the chapter to make it more user-friendly. A final draft will be released later this year for comment, so please keep a lookout for that. This has been no small outreach effort, so thanks to everybody who's been able to participate so far. And with that, I'm just gonna leave you with one final challenge. On your next project, ask the question, who are we not reaching and how can we engage them? Thanks.